Okay, let's go ahead and start this. This is our work study session in regards to succession planning and perhaps reorg. Mark, you up?
Yeah, so it just seems like when it rains it pours, right? And we just got another notification, at least it's a year out, but got another notification from our Development Services Director that in June of 2025, she's gonna be leaving. So Cal is kind of got that on her plan, and we're at least able to have plenty of time to do it, so I really appreciate that. But as with any departure of an individual with really whatever position, it's an opportunity for us to look at how do we want to structure this? What are the things that we have to do? How has the position evolved over time? And so we had a meeting about this and discussed it about a week ago or 2 weeks ago. And then I got some feedback from all of you on kind of some different opportunities. I definitely heard some feedback that individuals outside of our office and area were maybe concerned about what we were doing and how we were moving forward. From one commissioner I heard that, and so I think that there's always going to be that out there, and there's some uncertainty until we actually get something defined and determine how we're going to move forward. So in the meantime,
could you put a little bit of detail around those concerns?
I think I actually
Whoever
would
shared
you
it
like
with
to
you.
Yeah,
would
I
you
can.
like to do that?
I can. I got a phone call from different departments, such as the prosecuting attorney and stuff like that, that they were very upset with the idea that, not just them, that others were very upset with the idea that we're saying that we hadn't been taking care of ourselves when we were definitely the ones that were taken care of compared to others over the years. If you look at the amounts, and I couldn't disagree with them, when you look at the amounts that we have put underneath our department that didn't even exist years ago, it does add up. They feel like we're not taking care of them. I honestly believe that this is the year we're gonna be taking care of some of those issues. I think we have to, especially in that particular department, and I think a few of these other ones that are asking for some reclasses or reorgs, I think we'll be taking it seriously. It doesn't cost a lot of money. I think we'll be able to help out on those. But that's just my opinion on that. That's up to the commission when it's all over said and done with. But no, the definite thing is they're all wondering when they get theirs. And that's understandable. That happens with everything we do, but.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I'm the one that obviously made that comment, and I didn't hear any of that. And so it's just interesting that other electeds that might have concerns wouldn't have come directly to me, but that's their prerogative. And it's probably because I'm leaving. And,
They didn't come to me either.
yeah, so super curious. That's why I was curious about what the details were, because I hadn't heard any of that. And, I certainly get the perception, but again, I'll just reiterate, regardless of their feelings about it, our department doesn't serve just us. And so I'll just be very frank about that. Our IT department doesn't just serve the commissioners. Our HR department doesn't just serve the commissioners. We provide a lot of services to other county departments, and if there is anybody who is watching and listening that has that concern, I just invite you to talk to me about it. I'd be happy to share that with them. And I think it's good for us to talk about here and be aware of, especially as we head into budget, and it's the appropriate time to address other concerns like that on staffing. But yeah, I see our scope and purview, and this was, I think, discussed quite a bit at the salary commission, the citizen salary commission. What is that scope of services? And if you look at ours, it is pretty broad. So I appreciate you for bringing that to us, though.
I haven't watched that commission meeting. I
But
probably
you went
should
to a couple of
eventually.
them, right?
No, this is the very first one for the introduction.
Oh, that was Auditor Dunkel.
Yeah, I was gonna say, no, I stayed away from them completely.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, me too.
So our last meeting, I actually did have an agenda-ish type of thing. Our last meeting, this is the conversation that we had. I know it's really hard to see, I apologize, but the ask was to bring forward at this meeting 4 new positions, descriptions, not new positions necessarily. So I have here a Parks and Trails manager, can you pass that out? DEM manager,
Or, yeah.
IT manager, you just have to know. And then an executive assistant for the county administrator, which is based off the executive assistant position that was created over in the sheriff's office.
Like, these are all different, so I'm just passing them around, doing what I'm told. I have to get better at that.
DEM.
And I know that
Parks and Trails.
So we should have IT,
should
DEM.
have 4.
IT.
Okay.
IT, DEM, Parks and Trails, executive assistant, should have towards.
Which one are you starting on?
I wasn't gonna do them individually, only because since we met last, there's been a few conversations and different other ideas floating around. And so, before we put any more time, effort, and energy into this model, were there any other models that we wanted to explore, talk about, any other position descriptions I need to
I
find?
understand that Commissioner Trask was in a conversation with the Director of Public Works, and stuff like that, about what it might look like for park. I'd like to see what that actually looks like. When we're making these decisions, I'd like to see what the cost, how it would be spread out, you know, how we charge them, because we have to charge them. We cannot just run it through them, we have to charge them, or they have to charge us, because we can't have road funds paying for these things. But I actually, the more I thought about that, it seems like might be viable if we can find a way to charge it correctly without it being a violation with the auditor.
So just to expand on that for maybe some individuals that weren't involved in that conversation, it was a conversation where I was meeting with Loretta and Sharon was there, and we were meeting about something else, and it kind of got brought up that when you look at the operation of our Public Works Department, we tend to have crews, we tend to have a manager that manages those crews, manages the projects, assigns people to different areas, and keeps track of everything that's going on. When you look at our Parks Department is operated very similarly in the sense that we maintain all these different parks. We have projects that are going on in each park, and we have crews that are really deployed from home base out to those individual job sites. So I did talk with Loretta a little bit about what does that look like in terms of additional costs to the Parks Department. And she had not had time to really dive into that, but would like to, and then you didn't talk with her about that at all, okay. So she didn't really have time to dive into that, but was gonna sit down with Mike Collins. Mike is as the county engineer, is really responsible for the road funds and ensuring that they are spent within reason and within compliance of the law. And so she was gonna sit down with him and talk about that and kind of get his perspective on it. But as an option, potentially Parks and Trails, the idea was Parks and Trails could be housed out underneath Public Works Administration.
One of the things that intrigued me the more I thought about it, you know, we have $300,000 in a trail fund, for example, but we never have any way to utilize that, really. It's never come before us. But if you have a contract that you're already working with Public Works that has the machinery, does that expand the ability for us to better prepare our parks? Because it's already a contract in standing. We have our other parks that we went and visited that we know we could probably use a small equipment dozer or something that could really change access through there for ADA and everything else. We can try and do it like we're doing a piecemeal, but then we have to go out every time and try to pull it off if they already have a standing thing with Public Works. I don't know, it just seemed like, and even parking lots, because parks have a lot of parking lots. Chip sealing over the top of a parking lot, if they can actually do it internally make sure that there's no misuse of funds, that it is.
Even asphalting, I mean, we have an asphalt layer also.
Yeah.
Did we do that at the Union Boat Launch, or we've done projects like that?
We're
in the
asking
past,
right now for Latimer's Landing to do the
Yeah.
parking lot, but it needs to be done again.
So if we had an established, so it may be a lot more possibilities the more I thought about it. I just kept seeing possibilities if we can overcome the risks. And for the public that don't know, many years ago, the county got in trouble. Before I came here, it was right when I got elected, they brought it to us, explained to us that Public Works had been being used for many different things, including emergency management, IT, and everything else. It was billed to them, and we had to rectify that. That's how support services and stuff came to be. We were all using the same dollars, the same ER&R funds. There was so many different aspects of it that we had to clean up.
So for the Parks and Trails going under Public Works, another couple positives, I don't know if you've already thought about this, Commissioner, was you don't need a manager. You'll have a manager being reported to. You could also, if you don't want to do lead pay anymore, convert one of those positions to a lead, like a permanent lead or senior or whatever. So that would, not need a manager. You'd have another reporting structure there.
Yeah, Mary and I talked a little bit about this earlier today, just because we were going over your job description too. And, so I was throwing ideas out to Mary just to get her idea. There's a ton of other, well, however you wanna term it, a lot of other counties have their parks under Public Works. They have DEM under the Sheriff's Office. They also have, I mean, just taking a look at other counties and the way that they put their org chart together. Some of them makes me scratch my head because I would never want 911 or the jail. But a lot of them do make sense too, because you can utilize your other resources like your pavers or things like that too. So for me, moving parks to Public Works made a lot of sense. I'd like to make sure that we could do it financially. And there's also the union issues too, so we need to take a look at that.
And then one other one that is the idea of 911 handling emergency management. I'd like to see what that looks like. But with that, it all takes time, I understand that, but it's just when you hear it and you start going through the processes in your mind, you realize there's information you don't have to make a good decision. But I'd like to openly say it so we can get the information together to make a decision based off of an educated position instead of it feels good.
I do have some concerns about DEM and 911 combination, only because I know that that's a very fragile type of environment, and they're constantly struggling with the little resources that 911 centers have, and so I would just want to make sure we don't potentially overburden our 911 system as it exists today.
That's what but that's why we have to look and see what it is. Because of feeling wise, I can feel that there's different things I would worry about, but I'd like to see if my worries are valid or if they're just a gut issue.
So you'd want to see like an ILA,
Yeah,
a contract or
if they're
something like
interested
that?
in having the conversation, but they're working right now on bringing somebody in, I understand. So we may not be prepped to be able to have an honest, open conversation, what it would look like, because I'd like to see a proposal. Because that's a big thing. If we shifted to that, that'd be big. That's not a simple internal shift. But I can't just deny that it wasn't a very solid thought.
Could that be more of a long-term solution that we're exploring while we make some short-term decisions so that we can really utilize Diane before she walks out the door and leaves this giant hole in the organization? And like maybe, I don't know, well, their executive director gets up and running and has a lot of things to do over there, so.
Well, we may
See if
have
they
no
have the
choice.
bandwidth.
That may be the only way. But at the same time, once we establish a new path, that's the path we'll probably stick on. You know how it goes. We don't just change them every day.
Yeah, thank goodness.
Well, and I'm not, one of the ideas I think that Mary may be referring to is if you really wanted to seriously entertain MACECOM taking on 911, then it could remain as a separate division under the county administrator with a timeline associated with when we would review that. Is that what you were thinking?
Yeah, something that would be, more of like a project that we would manage and work through all those details, but we just don't have time to fully explore it with the timeline that we have for Diane to cross-train and do all the things we want to do and absorb her knowledge.
Well, what he just said, that would work as far as I'm concerned. If you just put it directly into him as a placeholder, we'll decide where to go with it within a year. That gives us the time to do it. It gives a place for it. And
As opposed to if we were to move it under the sheriff's office, then I agree. I mean, that's a significant enough move that it most likely would stay there.
But going underneath you directly for the time being seems like it'd be a smart, if you're willing to do it that way.
I haven't talked to Mary about that specifically, but that's kind of what I was interpreting it to be potential.
Well, let's consider that, because I'd love to see a proposal, see what from both. Let the sheriff actually make a proposal what it looks like too, because I have worries about that as well.
Have you talked to the sheriff's office? Oh.
I did, yeah, Brian and I spoke.
Okay.
And he said that he would take it. And much like other counties, Skagit moved their DEM under the sheriff's office because they have more broad connections with other agencies and the fire departments and things like that. So I want to make sure that when we do move DEM, that we keep that line of communication open with all the other departments as well. And so Ryan said that would be great. He's got the staff, he's got they typically will get the calls from MaceCom, and before they go to others. And so it just kind of made sense in my mind that we move it over there. He said he'd do it, he's got the personnel. But we could have him come in and present us with a plan too.
I don't know if they have to come in, I'd just like to see a plan put together, but
Oh, I
if we
think
put
we
it,
should, we should think of
but I mean, if we put it underneath him first, then we have time, because I'd like to see them bounced off each other.
And moving DEM under Mark, are you suggesting that the DEM Parks and Trails manager would still split? Or that the DEM Parks
Yes.
and Trails manager would?
I think they have to split anyway,
So
personally.
DEM manager and then a Parks and Trails, whatever we wanna do with that, but a DEM manager. The current Parks and Trails manager convert to just DEM.
What do you mean? So
So
I
you-
think that they should split.
Right,
So
but
you
I'm
have
saying
DEM
you
over here
want to
and
take that FTE, that is your current Parks and Trails DEM
our-
manager, and that should be a converted position to DEM manager, and then there would be an additional FTE for Parks and Trails manager.
Well, because currently, right now, he's a lead, right?
No.
There is a lead in Parks.
John's both. He's split, Parks and DEM.
He
That's
manages
right, but
both.
then we have a lead in parks.
Correct.
Right?
And if anything, we'd be putting it on, if we put it under Public Works, then we have the management issue there, that would be the additional time. and
Or do we
money.
make that position, the lead position, a permanent position and not, I hate our lead positions. I just think that they're silly
I
to
don't
have to
mind-
renew them every year.
I don't mind it being a lead position, that's a permanent position, but
Mm-hmm.
my worry is changing it to a manager that cannot work within the union confines.
That's the challenge that
And
I've had
that's-
with our lead positions,
Right.
Sharon. I think that's, you and I have talked a little bit about this before. In that when we create a lead position, it really is, we're compensating them or recognizing that they're actually doing more planning and organizing of the projects and the resources within that individual division. But the part that we lose, being that that position still exists within the union, is the oversight and the review of staff within that group.
Right.
Right, so it's like one union member is not going to provide an employee evaluation of another union member.
Right. So if we change that to a management or a permanent lead and take them out of the union, we've got to confirm that with the union. We've got to work with the union on that.
Huge. Yep.
Or you could add a lead
Yeah.
position to the union. So
Yeah.
like, for example, up in the assessor's office, we recently created a senior of a position series because the lead kept going over and over and over and over. And so we could potentially do the same where you create a senior or a permanent lead, and it's not lead pay we're annually doing, but it is a union position who can still do union work, and we don't have another issue there.
And that's the way I envision it, would be more like that, make it a permanent one so we don't have to keep going back and forth. But the only way it's gonna work, in my opinion, if we're to put parks underneath Public Works, is we're gonna have to figure a dollar amount that they're gonna charge us for their time. We have to have it set up to where they're charging us for their time as management, or it isn't gonna work. Because we can't let them do their work under Public Works. But that may be the cheapest way to do it, because how often do they really have to come in and get management help? So if they bill us only
Every
for
day.
that.
Yeah.
What type of help, though?
Yeah, they have to, is the question.
Guidance on, they have a list of things to do, and they're good about knowing that still they need that touch on where are we at on budget? Do we need to use procurement? It's kind of the day-to-day.
Priority.
And I'll put it a different way. Can it be an hour of their leadership's time billed to parks? You know, there's $50 for that day. That's a big difference between actually having somebody receiving half their pay on management level.
Well, and it sounds like it's more of an administrative finance piece that they need, and there's tons of those resources in Public Works.
Yeah.
But
Now,
they're still gonna
remember-
touch public works staff on that, like, I've been all morning working on our goals and our CFP for parks, make sure they marry up. Going back and forth with Bud on, okay, but we have to put this in there, do that in there, does that sound reasonable? I mean, so, at least an hour a day, cause yeah, there could be days where maybe there's nothing, but there's gonna be other times where it's
There's 5
half
hours.
my day.
Yeah, no, I get it, but it's easier if we find a method that we can bill it, excuse me, where they can bill it to us. For years, we had different ways that we would do it when it comes to the facility, when it comes to other different aspects of things they would do. The problem was, back in the day, it was $300 an hour every time they touched it. That was the problem, so we need to find out what it'll actually be and what we can get it down to.
Right, because we still pay rent for DEM, right?
Yes. Yes, yeah, the public
Or if
works
we park something
facility.
out there, we have to pay for that too.
Well, and that was part of the auditor's finding why, and that's why we do it, because we weren't. For years, we were just there.
Okay, so I've
Yeah.
captured those two things, the DEM manager and the permanent lead senior, whatever, for Parks and Trails under Public Works. I'm just going as we talk and moving things around.
So if we take, this one was, I don't know which option it was.
That was the one from our last workshop we did together.
Yeah, yeah, so we don't have IT facilities or the clerk under central services manager. We moved them up to the top line,
So
right?
you'd want them directly reporting to Mark.
With Mark having an executive assistant.
Okay.
That's if we're doing that. I think we're still looking to try and figure out what the best way to go. Excuse me. And what that would look like, it's one of these, that's the executive assistant for the sheriff.
That's what
but
it was
it-
modeled after.
Yeah, and you think this would work in this other position, under this model?
I did tailor it for the
Okay,
county
okay.
administrator, yeah, theirs was just the bones I worked off of. Since we already have a class spec for it.
Okay, I see that, what you did, that's a lot different than the title, but if it could fit within that title. Well, no, I guess not, executive assistant, that is different, okay, never mind.
And Mark, you've looked at this and you feel like this would give you a level of support that would help with your own efficiency?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
So we already have a public records person, and you've got that included in here too.
So I think that what this refers to would be when our public records officer may notify me to say, hey, we've received this public records request and you need to go search for this topic in your files to see if you have any responsive records, then the executive assistant could perform that search because they would have access to all of my files.
Okay.
And other duties as assigned by the administrator. And where did you have down for the pay on that one, roughly?
Well, I think, honestly, I think we need to recomp it, but currently, on the salary schedule, it is at a range. I don't think I haven't done a resolution to update it yet.
I'm just looking for ballparks anyway, so.
It was 30 something, hold on.
So on
Range 30.
Yeah, range 30.
the minimum qualifications,
Mhm.
let me see, an AA degree from an accredited college. Could you say that or?
Yeah,
Because-
so
Because
in-
there's a lot of people out there that didn't go to college that have the skills
Correct.
to do that.
You're absolutely 100% correct. And so up under it says any equivalent combination of education experience, which provides them may be considered. So really it would kind of be up to Mark, or you could say, or X amount of experience years would substitute specifically for this position for a degree for education.
We never have disgruntled individuals.
No, everybody's always.
And again, I can just take just a rounded,
Yeah.
number. I don't have to.
I was
have
looking for the
exact.
sheriff's office one, and I don't know if it's actually out here on our salary schedule yet.
Now I have to do resolutions.
Oh, gotcha, okay.
They haven't, I don't even think they filled it yet, because it's an appointed position.
Mm-hmm.
$25,000 blocks would be good for me, 50,
Okay.
75,
So rank,
60-ish.
60-ish?
Say 60-ish.
oh, okay.
Okay, that's all I need on that. So, 100K per body.
Fully loaded.
Yep, that's all I need, just so I can keep track of in my head, because we're gonna have to find these funds if we're doing them, we gotta find them.
So we've talked about potentially landing spots for Parks and Trails and DEM. Did you guys have any additional questions about IT?
I think I think it's gonna get bigger, it's never gonna stay the same. I think it's just gonna keep growing. So having a manager in that spot, I think is essential. But not having them under anyone either.
Diane, do you have any input on IT structure and what you think based on the years that you've managed that group and what they need?
I think it should be directly under the administrator.
Okay. What about the structure of, the current structure of the IT division?
I think a manager position or some kind of, I think an additional position, as we've talked about, that has that more global look at where IT needs to go, knows IT, which, I mean, and I don't disagree with Randy, it's kind of a working manager type thing. Because there's certainly a workload, and as Sharon said, it's not going to get smaller. I mean, now we're looking at moving the website. So it's just, we're just going that way. I think it's important too, I don't know if maybe Mark and or Mary or something, to talk to staff on some of this, like IT staff directly, and even in the other departments, because I am kind of hearing some rumblings from staff on, they want to make sure that their needs are heard and what they think.
I think that's critical. I talked to Kelly the other day, called him in my office and said, what do you think? And he said that I was the first person that asked him what he thought, and so.
I think they need to be heard.
They do, absolutely they do.
So, I'm just one person here, but I wanna tell you that I'm not, if we do a executive assistant, I see that as a replacement for that top line, not as an addition to.
What do you mean?
Well, I don't wanna have what are we using, what's your term now?
Central Services Manager.
To have a central services manager and put a whole nother leadership thing over the top of all of them as we're moving it around. I don't see it that way, so I just wanted to make clear, I see that as an either or. That position transforms into that and then they become a line level underneath
The
it.
executive assistant becomes the
That-
central services
The
manager.
central services manager tagline disappears and they move up to be underneath all of them with that assistant. Or we move them into other areas.
Well, I think they have
do-
different job duties. In my experience as being, I've been executive assistants before, and in my experience, that's a different job than a manager.
Yeah, well, if they can't handle the management stuff, then I'm not gonna be in favor of it. I don't wanna just add a secretary into him or executive that way. It's different to take on the managerial roles with him being the final say as the final manager, in my opinion. Because other than that, we're just adding bodies and throwing them in there in between to cover the workload.
That to me sounds like go ahead.
Oh, I was trying to recall conversations that I've had individually with Randy before about this, and what I understood you to say was, you had concerns about creating additional manager positions, but if you still had the structure of IT with a lead worker that reported directly
Yeah.
to me, that was something that you were okay
Yes.
with.
All that I'm still good with.
Definitely, and we'll sit down and talk with staff and see what their ideas are in IT. But is that something that you've done? Have you asked them those questions
No.
about what they want? Okay.
Not directly, no.
Okay.
Not comprehensively and not together, no.
Okay,
I've had some input individually. And I just am recommending that, yeah, before something's done, you and or Mary sit down with them and hear what they think.
oh, absolutely, yeah, no,
I mean, even in our own office, I think.
Yeah.
You know, Mackenzie, Cammy.
Yep,
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good next step too, is, you know, I mean, we still have some questions, I think, about where some of these things are gonna land. In particular with parks, I think that's the biggest kind of volleyball at the moment. You know, and I think it would be great to just kind of solicit that feedback and have a listening session or two with you guys. I don't know that we need to be involved in that
Okay.
necessarily at this point, just for the sake of expediency.
And
And-
you have these big chunks you need to put somewhere, such as parks, DEM, but then within my day-to-day, like yesterday we were talking in our
great
budget
example,
meeting,
yeah.
I know lodging tax. I'm really the only one. Mackenzie's been attending for the clerking side, but that and like left one. I mean, there's things that I do that are just a duty of mine. They need to land somewhere.
Is there a way to get a list of those from you and what your recommendation would be on where to put them?
She has the list.
Where?
In my
Well, she's hiding
retirement
it.
list. I'm not
Hiding it.
hiding
Well,
it,
if
I've
you
been
could
making it.
share that, that would be
She
extremely
continually
helpful.
revises when something else comes up
Be
and
great if
says,
that
oh,
was
somebody
just like
should
kind
know
of
how
a
to do
shared,
this.
even if it
shared
was a
document.
living,
It's
you
just,
know.
it's just moving with, my dates.
That
we
would
made
be
it to
very
December
helpful.
1st, yeah, if you-
One of the
if you
things
push
that
it
we
back to
discussed
December 1st.
yesterday in our budget meeting, where it's really, the meeting is a meeting of Diane's group together, and it also includes Mary from HR, but we're talking about budget, and we're talking about some of the functions that Diane does, and the leadership role that she plays in lodging tax, the knowledge that she has about how lodging tax money can be spent, and the fact that she administers or oversees the lodging tax advisory group, and really directs them and kind of control, at least places before them decisions that need to be made, and then gives them deadlines associated with when they need to make those and an overview of how that money needs to be spent according to the law. So looking at some of those duties, when we were talking about it yesterday, we saw that really potentially being able to fall under the budget team. So Jen Byerly and her group could maybe pick up some of those responsibilities for administering the lodging
That's a
tax.
great idea.
We talked about also left one, as a benefit, maybe that needs to come under HR and I could trade for Board of Equalization.
I didn't talk about the trade part.
Oh, I think that we did. I remember that distinctly.
You did, yes, I remember that distinctly.
Just so we can clarify what I was talking about, because the manager and the lead aspect, we all agree on. The worries that I'm having or what I don't want to see is us just throw a bunch of money and new positions at things to offset what's one movement that's happening. Example, if we keep her position as it is, okay, that body stays there, those dollars stays there, they don't go away. We take away some of the duties, we make the emergency manager, that is a minus of duties, because they no longer would maybe have parks. So we're moving parks and a cost over parks over into public works, which is about 50K. We create a manager position, if we do, for the IT, we're looking at almost 200K. If we create an executive position on top of that, executive assistant, you're looking at least 100K. What I'm saying is we have one person moving out, we need to figure the best way to do this without adding $500,000 onto the commissioner's side of the budget table. That's what I'm saying. Now, if we can offset some of those costs by doing certain things, if the executive, we put in an executive director position and they handle some of those other duties, and we start to offset by having the IT manager, by having a few others, that's one way to go. Or not go, because if you don't go, then we start to keep the monies where we're at now.
Yeah, that's what I definitely, that's what I understood.
Okay, you understand what I'm
saying,
saying, okay.
and I think I do. In that you didn't, that you really saw those individuals that were in lead positions. Originally, we kind of were talking about including parks, that the
Yeah.
lead positions could report directly to me.
Yeah.
Now we're talking potentially about moving parks under public works, but seeing what that cost is, and providing that oversight and leadership of the parks department. But what I understood you to be saying is that you didn't want to create manager positions. You just wanted those lead positions to report to me. So didn't really want to change that underlying structure.
For the most part, we may have to offset some of that, because not everybody can do it, if we do away with that whole position.
And the other commissioners have different perspectives of what those things are and what needs to be created. So that's why we're actually getting together to discuss some of this.
Is there a staff consensus on what this should look like?
Staff consensus, like us?
Like you all, I mean, and it could be maybe depending on how some of your listening sessions would go, to sort of, further develop, kind of what a set of recommendations might look like.
Yeah.
Ultimately, the structure that we create is something that you're gonna have to live within. And so I think having that input and having at least some consensus from staff, based on some of the parameters that we've given, would probably be really helpful in terms of moving this forward.
Right. I wanna make sure that as we get into some of the details and start to shift some of the responsibilities that Diane's picked up that are kind of one-offs, right? It's not something that's done on a daily basis, but it's something that may happen once a year or may happen, well, the lodging tax, I think, is a quarterly meeting. But there's other things that she does that with lake management districts and other things that she's been educating Mackenzie on as part of the clerk of the board. So there's pieces of this stuff that that's going to be split all over the place.
We need that list, though.
Yeah, we can get it. The impact of some of those changes, right? So as we take some of these responsibilities and assign them to other individuals, we definitely need to work through HR to make sure that that's not changing that job description significantly.
Well, and I would also like, if you're gonna do the listening sessions, staff input on the list Diane's created, where their take is on it.
Like who wants
So as
to?
opposed to IT, DEM, like we're talking about big buckets of work,
Right.
where also, I'm sure Mackenzie has a couple great ideas on things she's cross-trained on and maybe belong with her or not with her.
Well, and the idea of moving BOE over from your area and switching job duties like that, I like that idea too, because then we're still doing the work, but we're just focusing on where they should be instead of where we think we want them to be, if that makes sense.
And those things change, right, over time. So you look at BOE, you look at civil service, you look at how the workload for those individual positions. I've talked to Diane about the history that she's seen over the years here at Mason County and how these positions have kind of floated around to individuals that have picked up and done them. And sometimes it was just an individual that was kind of a temporary worker that came in and did some stuff on that. But they've evolved. When you look at the workload associated with BOE and the workload the demand for civil service, especially in trying to get individuals into our corrections staffing, right now both of those things are pretty high demand. And so, yeah, I mean, is it right to say, or is it adequate to only assign one FTE to do that whole scope of work? Good question.
So we know when Diane's leaving. Right, December 31st.
Oh, we know, yeah.
I think it would also be really helpful if we set ourselves a timeline to make
Okay.
decisions. Because we can sit and I think we could have the philosophical conversation
Yeah.
all summer. But I think we also need to have a realistic timeline of when, what are those decision points between now and, mid-July, August, September, especially as we roll into budget. So I think I'd be really interested in the timeline, and I'd really be interested in putting some actual dollar figures around the positions that we have in front of us. I think these are good. I think these are really helpful. And I also think it would be helpful to then start looking at the proposed org charts and putting a dollar figure associated with each of those org charts. I don't think that that's going to be the only factor that we use to make a decision, or that I use to make a decision, but we got to have some working number to,
And what I would propose that we do is that we kind of fit that into Jen's budget calendar, right? So she has what she calls PLRs that come before the commissioners. This would be a PLR, right? So this is a policy level request to the commission. It would be nice, what we bring before the commission was already agreed to, that's what you guys wanted to see. So we can kind of back into that timeline and see how that looks. We saw the calendar yesterday during briefing, so.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think those are a couple of things that I'm looking for in the short term.
Okay.
I think those are good ideas.
Well, I can definitely sit down with Public Works and talk about what does that look like, Public Works and Diane, and if Diane thinks we should include Bud in that discussion in terms of what does that daily operation look like, how much time does it look like it would need in terms of oversight from Public Works, because that's what I'm gonna need in order to get an estimated cost that Public Works is gonna charge for it. As far,
I was gonna say, if we made that decision, would we also have to move their fleet and stuff under ER&R, or is that something that could remain?
It's still current expense. It's
It
a
would
current
still remain
expense
that.
function, yeah. Yeah, I would just question, does Public Works existing staff have the capacity to manage
Yeah,
20 parks?
yeah.
Yes, Bud's great at day-to-day. He absolutely knows it.
Yeah,
And keep in mind too, Bud nearing where he'll probably retire in the next couple years. So,
well, I think that's an extremely valid point of what Diane's talking about. We're talking about day-to-day operational stuff. When the commissioners have goals or objectives that say we want to do significant change to our parks. We've talked about the Sand Hill Park up there, right? We've talked about the design for what does that look like if we created a soccer fields and multi-purpose fields up on the upper part of that. Well, that actually is well beyond the day-to-day operational side of things. We definitely have a lot of detail for that, but that's just an example. So if the commission wanted to focus on a different park and wanted to do different things, then where does that go, and who do you want assigned to doing that?
or if even.
And if that's,
Even
if
park
you're,
acquisition,
Right.
if in the future somebody wants, we wanna have a conversation about expanding our available parks, That's a
especially
huge
with
Well, and if
REIT
it's
2
park
becomes more
acquisition-
available.
Right,
I'm sorry, I interrupted you, what'd you say?
If REIT 2 becomes more available,
It
there would be
will.
more money to put towards parks, whether improvement or acquisition.
My understanding with this current board is that as of 2027, you've been putting money away within REIT 2 to pay off all of the welfare debt and all the utility debt. And so once that's satisfied, you're looking at $1.2 million a year now becoming available within REIT 2 to go somewhere else. So it really does open up some options for us there.
Yeah, I'd really like to continue concentrating on getting those debts paid off, getting welfare paid off.
And we definitely have that well documented. I think we've actually reserved it. We present that in our financials. We've talked to the treasurer about that. She's aware that we're wanting to do this and looking at the options and what does it look like. And there are pieces, once we combined all the debt under general obligation debt and refinanced like you guys did a few years ago. Great move because we were able to get much lower interest rates, but there's pieces that are more than just welfare sewer.
Right.
Right, and so we're looking at that to say, okay, when we satisfy this debt, we're gonna satisfy it all, and pay it off, and then looking forward, there is some pretty significant revenue options coming forward that would, if the board wanted to finance something, that we could dedicate that revenue to finance park improvements, for sure. But my point is that that's beyond the scope of day-to-day operational issues, right, and definitely takes a lot of planning. We have a lot of materials for some of our projects, but as new projects arise, who would we assign that to and what does that look like? Because if we're gonna assign it to the engineers, let's say at Public Works, the engineering group at Public Works, then there is additional costs associated with that. There's additional time that they're spending doing that. There's always a consequence in the sense that takes away the time that they're doing designing the roads and bridges solutions. But don't want to lose sight of what that looks like.
Well, this is going to cost money. It just is. This is a huge hole we have to fill. And how do we set ourselves up? Like you said, IT is going to continue to grow. Everything's going to just continue to get bigger. How do we set ourselves up not just for today, but 3-5 years down the road and not having to look at another reorg in that time frame.
And that's my goal. I want to set it up so that, you know, because none of us are going to be here, or all of us are not going to be here at the same time, or we retire, or decide not to run, whatever, or leave us, whatever. Then I want it to set up, or I want it to be set up so that we can, the next commission, whoever takes my place, looks at it and go, wow, great job, you know, and I'm comfortable with this moving forward. That's what I want. I want the people of the county to look at it and go, good job, commissioners. Not, geez, what were you thinking?
I want to make sure that we're fiscally sound with what our decisions are. No matter what, there's a cost of doing business, and that's what I'm always going to look at. The cost of doing business includes the current expense for that position, and one of the things that we're going to be putting on. Then we have to ask ourselves, there's a whole county here. Is it best to throw $500,000 into this one hole for one expenditure, or should we also be looking around? Because we've been denying people for a long time. You know, the or the prosecuting attorney position, because they couldn't find attorneys, we denied them a second position. We deny positions a lot. It's easy for ourselves. I just want to make sure that we're as fair with everybody else as we are with ourselves.
Well, we also gave them a position too.
Yes, we did. We gave them
So
one.
it's not, we're not denying. We're making sure that the decisions we make are the best decisions for the county as a whole.
Yeah, and I can't recall, with the exception of the 2017 budget cuts, I can't recall a time where we didn't add positions in a budget cycle. And correct, we're the beneficiary of that sometimes. But we've also, I think, you know, when you look at, we've added sheriff's deputies, we've added, you know, clerical positions across different departments and things like that. I mean, that's the name of the game. I mean, that's never gonna, that's why we exist as a legislative body, is to prioritize and make those decisions. And I think it comes back to, how do we communicate the value of these positions to the organization? Mm-hmm. How do we put a value on the work that Diane does that is maybe falls under that other duties as assigned, or something that the position has collected over years and years? Or how do we assign value to what an extra IT person brings to, you know, how long I have to wait for my help desk ticket to get resolved, you know, if I'm out at, you know, environmental health or wherever, you know? And so I think we just have to be able to put a value to these things, and then obviously, you know, it comes back to us to prioritize what that looks like against all the other requests that we get, as we do every year. Especially since for 4 years we haven't taken the 1%. So there's also that.
Yep.
So we've tried to do as much as we can with what we have, and so you're up against that, you know, that pressure as well.
Yeah, I think that the divisions like information technology and facilities, everybody knows that they're touched by them, right? Those are definitely the model example of what an internal service is. That we have folks that go around, and we've got amazing individuals within our IT and facilities department, and so all of the offices and departments definitely recognize the services that those individuals provide to them. So that one, to me, has never been a challenge to explain to other departments and offices throughout the county, because they receive such great service. So
There you have it.
there you go, right on cue. Facilities hard at work.
Can I get a copy of our personnel changes that we've done over the last, let's say, 6 years?
To the personnel policy?
No, to the personnel amount.
Position.
Oh, gotcha, the FTEs, yeah.
FTEs, where they went, where they're from.
Share that with all of us, please.
Yep.
And then I will sit down. I'll sit down with Diane and try and get her staff together to give input on what they think, and then we can definitely bring forward a recommendation. I think that from I think that my perspective may be different than Mary's perspective, may be different than Diane's perspective. So I think it'd be important to ask all three of us, because you might see some differences there.
And again, ideally, I would like to see you work through those things and,
Okay.
and have some, just get us in the neighborhood of some consensus.
Well, I think that the challenge that we've had when we've talked about it as a group is that there's a concern about the increasing the number of individual direct reports to me. When I look at having an executive assistant that can really help with the minutia associated with day-to-day operational stuff, would that create the capacity that I could then handle the day-to-day operational decisions that need to be made within that additional scope? I personally feel like I can, but I don't feel like other individuals do. I think other individuals look at it and say, well, is, you know, how you get into the weeds on certain things sometimes, and maybe that's just my decision-making.
But you also learn how to
Process.
overcome that when you're sitting there and you've got 20 decisions you have to make, you haven't made, and you start making.
Yeah,
You know?
triage.
Yeah, that's the way life it always is.
Yeah, and some of that is dependent upon the specific topic, the specific dollar value or cost associated with the decision that we need to make, where I'm gonna need to get additional information to feel comfortable recommending something to the commission. But yeah, there definitely, I do think that having that support person would give the opportunity to do that. If you take and pull Parks and Rec and put them under Public Work, that takes one away, and it just goes up through Public Works, and I work with the Public Works Director they manage the daily operations and future of that.
Can you also reach out to the sheriff?
About DEM? Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, there's the real potential here that, you know, essentially what you would be looking at, you know, would be only getting, well, not only, but, you know, IT and then some of the, you know, related central services work if you put public, parks under Public Works, if DEM goes elsewhere, you know, in terms of a direct report, you'd really, you know, potentially be
Facilities
only,
and-
yeah, you'd really be, you know,
IT.
kind of be inheriting, you know, maybe just a half of what you would otherwise, so. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I definitely see in here the amount of time and effort that Diane spends, you know, working with Parks and
Definitely
DEM.
hear about it.
Yeah.
Well, and then also if we could
Maybe flinch.
figure out the, that's funny, the jobs like LTAC and LEF, where could those responsibilities go? You know, could they go under Jen's department? And that's another thing, why is Jen a manager and we've got so many directors?
Yeah, why is that?
Yeah,
Why am I manager? I don't know.
yeah.
Why-
Huh. I wonder.
Because we were doing away with directors for years, and we had 9 when I started. And directors are farther above the workload. And
Why
we-
did you wait to bring that up until there was like 4 minutes left?
Yeah.
Timing, I guess. Food for thought.
I can't answer
No,
your
you
question.
inherited the structure.
So, there is, yeah, sure, there's questions about that. But I think that when I'm looking at those individual duties that you were referring to, I'm looking at what are the skill sets that are necessary and where would they best reside. So for lodging, where you have a special revenue, it's very specific about how that money can be spent. The budget team and the resources that Jen has, I think that there's capacity, and I think that's where that belongs.
That is-
When I look at LEF and I think about benefit-related things, definitely HR handles all of our benefits, right? HR is the other internal service fund that really is the entire organization, so.
No matter what, we're never gonna be able to overcome one aspect of it. I've been around for a long time, and I've seen her bring somebody in to committees like LEF, stuff like that, and then I've seen them gone, and I've seen her had to step back in, and with us all going, oh shit.
Well,
That
that's
happened-
gonna, I think that's gonna happen.
I know.
Wherever,
That works.
That's what I'm saying.
wherever you go, that's
Well,
just part of life.
That history is the part we can't replace.
No. it
No.
can't
Because
be.
she'll come in and she'll say, well, you know, 15 years ago, this happened and this happened, and then we say, okay, then that's what we go by, because that was our history, so we're gonna lose that.
I
That's,
can tell you that every time Diane told me not to do something and I did it, she was right.
It's pretty
And I
good
told them.
language.
again,
Yeah, she
Radar O'Reilly,
But I think that's the other point why having a timeline is so critical
Sure.
for us, because like we want, I think we'd really benefit from having overlap.
Okay.
So that there would be some ability.
Transition.
Yeah, yeah, to do some of that download. It won't be perfect and it won't be complete, but it gives us at least a chance.
And we've already started some of that, Kevin. So like we were just talking about lodging and excise tax, the next meeting is coming up in July, I believe. And Jen and her staff are gonna go attend that with
I think they
Diane.
were at the last meeting too.
I know Mackenzie, I've had her attend, and I'll
Yeah.
have her clerk this meeting, and I share with Mackenzie and Mark.
Yeah,
Any
I believe
kind-
Jen
Yeah.
was at our
She
last
may have been, yeah.
LTAC too.
And whenever there's, the unique things come up, I always share
Yeah,
what we do or what we don't,
I
where I
can't-
keep it,
I can't believe how much history comes up in a simple one like the left board.
yeah.
I mean, that's a simple, sometimes it can be done in 5 minutes, but man, when history's needed, it goes all the way back.
So also looking at time and looking at kind of how we want to move forward with this and making sure that we give Mary direction on the work that we want her to do. And because to come back with dollar figures and financial impacts, I feel like we need to give her some specifics. So we're looking at the DEM potentially moving under the sheriff's office or remaining where it's at with its current structure with a manager in charge of it. We're looking at parks. Either if it does go under public works, then the lead position stays the lead position, and the administration of parks falls under public works, and we're gonna get a cost associated with what that would be. Right, so it would definitely be a cost. As far as the, I'll sit down with Diane's direct reports, so Mackenzie and the IT team and facilities, and we can talk about that.
in parks.
So,
Because, I mean, if you look
Parks.
at everything that she's doing now, there's quite the list of, so there's a lot of people that need.
So if that sounds like something that you all agree with in terms of moving forward, then I can create a timeline associated with when we need to make some of these decisions, so that it fits within Jen's budget calendar. That'll be the driving force behind it.
Yeah,
Is that, you guys all good with that? Okay.
yeah.
Do you have any additional questions?
Hey, Jen, I just took it over there. Got it. Sounds good.
Okay, now entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move we adjourn.
Second.
Here, no objection? We're adjourned.
Feedback.